Hello everyone, this is Max, and I am coming to you once again from the High Sierra Nevada. And today I want to talk about a really cool mutualistic relationship that exists up here in the Sierras between the white bark pine and the Clark's Nutcracker. So let's get started. So to start off with, I want to give a little introduction to what I mean by mutualistic relationship. So symbiotic relationships, as we call them in ecology, are basically where you have two different species or more that interact together in some sort of a way, and this interaction intimately connects the lives of these different species. So that's what symbiotic relationship is, and different types of symbiotic relationships have different effects on the participants involved. So for a mutualism, that is where a symbiotic relationship results in a positive result for both parties involved. So both organisms or both species benefit from the interaction. So this is a mutualism that I'm talking about here. So the white bark pine behind me benefits from this relationship, and the Clark's Nutcracker benefits from this relationship. So a little bit about the white bark pine. So this is a pine tree found throughout the high elevation mountains throughout much of the western United States. They're found in the Rocky Mountains, but they're also found here in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. They're usually the last trees you see before you get to timberline, which is basically where there's no more trees and it's just rock and maybe some other plants. But basically where trees can't survive. So because it lives up here in the high elevation mountains, the white bark pine is specially adapted to really cold and really exposed environments. And as a result, it is different from a lot of other pine trees. And one of the most remarkable differences that really stands out when you first see these trees is their shape. So they have a variety of shapes. They could be like the one here that's right behind me, where to be honest, it doesn't look like a tree. It looks like a cluster of really small trees that are all together. Or you can have it where it's just like a bush that's only like a few feet high. And it really depends on where you go in their range. Some places they're more tree-like, some places they're more bush-like. But they just have these really weird shapes. And that helps them to survive up here in these really, really windy and exposed environments where the winds can be really severe and also pretty consistent throughout the year. But one might ask, how did it get here in the first place? If it's a really difficult environment, would it really want to be out here? One of the reasons why it's the white bark pine is out here is because no other pine trees are able to survive this high up and in these exposed places. So there's an available niche or ecological role in this particular community within the Sierras. And so the white bark pine, even though it's a more difficult life for a pine tree, is able to survive here because it's specially adapted and take advantage of this open space in the ecological community. Another reason, however, why it's up here involves the mutualism that I'm here to talk about today. And in order to get into that, I first need to introduce the Clark's Nutcracker, which is a species of bird in the crow and jay family that lives up here in the high elevation mountains of the western United States. One of the characteristics of that family of birds is that they're very intelligent and they're very generalistic, which means that they feed on a wide variety of things. So Clark's Nutcrackers feed on animals and also many different types of plants. So they have a very diverse diet. But for a jay, they kind of stand out as having a very specific diet because for a jay, they're heavily dependent on one particular food source. And that food source is the nuts and seeds that come out of the pine cones of the whitebark pine. They also eat from other types of pine trees, but the majority of the nuts that they eat come from the whitebark pine. So that is how the Clark's Nutcracker benefits from this mutualism. The whitebark pine gives them lots of nuts and seeds that they can then store away for harder times. Usually starting in late July or August, the nuts in the pine cones of the whitebark pine are ready for harvest, and so the Clark's Nutcrackers start harvesting these nuts, and they have a special pouch in their throat called a crop that they can store multiple nuts in at a time, several dozen. And so they'll go to the trees, get as many nuts as they can inside their crop, and then once they have it full, they'll fly off to different locations and bury each nut individually in its own hole in the ground. And they bury them and store them away so that during harder times, especially during the winter, they will have food that they can eat and can see them through until the spring arrives. What is really cool about the Clark's Nutcrackers is that they also remember where most of those nuts are placed. Studies have shown that they seem to have a good memory of their surroundings and landmarks such as boulders or specific trees, and they use those to help remember where they buried all their nuts. And that's how they can bury so many nuts in so many different locations and still be able to find them. However, while the Clark's Nutcrackers do have amazing memory as far as where they buried their seeds and nuts, they don't have perfect memory. The statistic that I've heard is that for every 1,000 seeds a Clark's Nutcracker buries, it forgets the location of 300 seeds, which means that 300 seeds that it buries will possibly become whitebark pines in the next spring. And that is how the whitebark pine benefits from this mutualism, is it gets its seeds dispersed and then some of them left alone so that new trees can germinate in the coming spring. So that's the mutualism between the Clark's Nutcrackers and the whitebark pine. But there's actually a little bit more going on with this relationship than just the benefits that both species get. And one thing that I find really cool is that the Clark's Nutcrackers are actually one of the reasons why the whitebark pine lives where it lives and has these weird shapes. So in other words, the Clark's Nutcracker is influencing how the whitebark pine evolves. So let me explain what I mean by this. So the Clark's Nutcrackers, they prefer to bury their nuts in places where the snow does not pile on very thick. And usually those places are where it is very windy in the winter time. And as a result, the Clark's Nutcrackers usually bury the nuts of the whitebark pine in places that are very windy, have a lot of constant wind exposure, and as a result, the trees have had to evolve to live in environments that have lots of wind and are then very exposed. And that's influenced how they grow and what their shape is. So that is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this worth your time and that you got something out of this. If you liked this video and want to see more on ecological concepts that I'm familiar with, or just any of my wildlife watching videos, please subscribe and give this video a like and recommend it to other people. And hopefully I will see you in the next video.